on July 4th, 2025, it'll be the 249th anniversary of U.S. independence. And the most famous part of that story is obviously the Declaration of Independence, perhaps one of the most important documents, at least the way Americans like to think about it, in American history. So, one of the things to understand about the document is that how does it come about? What role does it have? Well, there's the historical document, if you will, how it comes up in 1776, and then there's the document that kind of takes on a life of its own later on. In 1776, remember the Americans had already traded shots, traded blows with the British since April of 1775, and there's a debate going on in the colonies over whether or not we should declare independence or we should try to work out some kind of peace with the British. In Britain, there's a number of people putting pressure on the king to call the Americans traitors, accuse them of treason, and go in and use force against them very vigorously. There's a lot of negotiation going on as well. But by June 1776, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia puts forth a resolution in the Second Continental Congress asking for a Declaration of Independence. Congress approves a committee of 5 to write a declaration. Thomas Jefferson takes up this task at the behest of the committee. He produces a document in a day or two. It is then edited by the committee together and then edited again by Congress. On July 4th, it is approved in the morning, probably the late morning is probably what we think, and that ever after is known, of course, as Independence Day. So one of the things that's important about the Declaration is that in English history, the declarations were a type of document in which someone tried to explain in very plain language the end of one order, if you will, and the beginning of a new one. And so, what is the Declaration declaring? Well, it's declaring the independence of the 13 states. And so, for much of the history, the first 50 years at least, the document was remembered for just that, declaring independence. Now, on July 4th, 1826, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, probably two of the most famous revolutionary figures, both die on the same day. And this was seen as kind of almost a providential event that God had blessed America, if you will. Here are the two two of the greatest American revolutionary figures dying on the 50th anniversary of independence. Pretty amazing. And we begin to see in the 1820s a big push to remember the Declaration as a statement of American principles. Now, this is most popularized by Abraham Lincoln in the 1850s, who sees the Declaration as containing kind of the principles of the American system, particularly the principle of equality, which Lincoln uses to attack the institution of slavery. Ever since the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, the Declaration has been seen by Americans as just this, a statement of our principles at which Americans return time and again to press for things like equality, for the pursuit of happiness, for the protection of life and liberty, and as a statement of American rights. So this is what this is what July 4th is supposed for us to commemorate the independence of our country, the development of a self-governing republic that takes some time after July 4th to develop. And also, we can say that after 50 years at least, it becomes a broad statement of American principles. So on July 4th, hopefully you will remember the Declaration of Independence, remember our independence from England 249 years later.
All right, so the Declaration was also a bold move because people at the time understood very clearly that by declaring independence, they're essentially revolting against British rule, and the British are going to view them as traitors. This means that they're going to subject themselves to all of the potential violence of war, the confiscation of their properties, the attacks on their communities and such. It was a very bold move. And in fact, some scholars think that one of the reasons the congressmen put their names to the document later on over the summer of 1776, that this is a sign that they realize the gravity of the moment, that this is so important that they're going to put their names down for posterity and show, right, we understand what we're doing. This is a dangerous move. The other part of the Declaration is that they want all the states to do this unanimously. So the Second Continental Congress had no authority over all the 13 states. It was basically a group of representatives from each of the 13 colonies. And so they can't really speak for everyone. They want all the states to come together, or all the colonies rather, and declare themselves, and they do in the Declaration, that the colonies declare themselves independent states, right? And so as Ben Franklin put it, we all must hang together or we'll all hang separately. What he meant by that is that we've got to come together in some kind of unity to stand together as the United States of America, as the Declaration puts it, or the British are going to pick us off one by one, and we're not going to make it. And certainly, if we look at the history of how the Revolution plays out, the British do try to divide and conquer, one of the oldest tactics in the book. But the Americans are able to resist and remain together and ultimately win their independence, which is recognized by the British in the Treaty of Paris in 1783.